Medea Benjamin, welcome back to the show.
Hey, nice to be on with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being back on today. I think it's been at least a couple of years since the last time we spoke. And I definitely want to have you on today because Code Pink is staging nationwide protests over this weekend against the Biden administration's march towards war with Russia. So I just wanted to touch base with you, see what you have planned, and why do you think it's so crucial for Americans to turn out and say that we do not support this march towards war with Russia?
I'll be at the action in New York City this weekend. And I think it's so important because we see this mad rush towards war by a Democratic administration, which means that the Democrats in Congress who would normally be more on our side and saying, whoa, slow down. Certainly if it was under Trump, they'd be doing that. Right now, most of them are going along with this crazy escalation of the conflict. They have bills in Congress, both the Republicans and the Democrats, that are competing with each other on who can be harsher on Putin, who can send more lethal aid to Ukraine. And this is totally against what is in the best interests of the American people, as well as of the people of Ukraine, Russia, the Europeans who are part of NATO. You see right now this tremendous disconnect between what the politicians are doing and what the people want. You know, after 20 years of war in Afghanistan and coming up on 20 years in Iraq, the American people have no appetite for US getting involved in another war. We also have been seeing this entire year where the Democratic administration has been fighting to pass legislation that would allocate money to important needs of the American people as well as the environment. And if we continue on this path of not only sending more lethal aid to Ukraine, but justifying US militarism, we'll never have the funds we need for the things that are actually in the benefit of the people on the planet.
And I'm sure you saw the exchange that happened yesterday between a reporter and the spokesman for the State Department, where the State Department is claiming that Russia is going to stage a false flag attack. And there was a reporter yesterday who asked the spokesman to provide some kind of evidence, and he could not do that.
We told you a few weeks ago that we have information indicating Russia also has already prepositioned a group of operatives to conduct a false flag operation in eastern Ukraine. So that, Matt, to your question, is an action that Russia has already taken.
It's an action that you say that they have taken, but you have shown no evidence to confirm that. And I'm going to get to the next question here, which is, what is the evidence that they, I mean, this is like crisis actors, really? This is like Alex Jones territory you're getting into now. What evidence do you have to support the idea that there is some propaganda film in the making?
Matt, this is derived from information known to the U.S. government, intelligence information that we have declassified. I think you know.
Okay, well, where is it? Where is this information?
It is intelligence information that we have declassified.
Well, where is it? Where's the declassified information?
I just delivered it.
No, you made a series of allegations and statements.
Would you like us to print out the topper? Because you will see a transcript of this briefing that you can print out for yourself.
That's not evidence, Ned. That's you saying it. That's not evidence. I'm sorry.
What would you like, Matt?
I would like to see some proof that you that you can show that
Matt, you have been
that shows that the Russians are doing this. Ned, I've been doing this for a long time.
I know, that was my point.
You
have been doing this for quite a while. You know that when we declassify intelligence information,
right. And I
we do so in a means. We do so with an eye to protecting sources and methods.
Kabul is not going to fall. I remember a lot of things. So where is the declassified information other than you coming out here and saying?
Matt, I'm sorry you don't like the format, but we have declassified.
It's not the format; it's the content.
I'm sorry you don't like the content. I'm sorry you are doubting the information that is in the possession of the U.S. government.
Oh my God! What is the evidence that you have that suggests that the Russians are even planning this?
Matt,
I'm not saying that they're not, but you just come out and say this and expect us just to believe it without you showing a shred of evidence that it's actually true. Other than when I ask, or when anyone else asked, what's the information? You said, well, I just gave it to you, which was just you making a statement.
Matt, you said yourself, you've been in this business for quite a long time. You know that when we make information, intelligence information public, we do so in a way that protects sensitive sources and methods. You also know that we declassify information only when we're confident in that information. If you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to find solace in information that the Russians are putting out, that is for you to do.
I'm not asking what the Russian government is putting out, and what is it supposed to mean?
Video, because U.S. officials are describing very specific scenes, but do they actually have a video?
The fact that we are able to go into such great detail, obviously I'm not going to spell out what is in our possession, but I will leave it to you. I will leave that to your judgment, to your imagination.
There are no facts that you've spelled out.
And of course, the spokesman for the State Department, he is a former CIA analyst. We also have representatives from Congress who are former CIA analysts who are repeating these claims and, again, not providing any evidence whatsoever. You mentioned the Iraq War. To me, this is very reminiscent of Iraq, or even back then, at least the Bush administration had the courtesy to create some fake satellite images and for Colin Powell to hold up the vial at the UN. They're not even providing any evidence whatsoever. They're just saying, take our word for it. Russia is planning to stage a false flag attack.
Well, just wait, they'll come up with more, quote, evidence. And I think it was fantastic in that press conference that the reporters were pushing back and even brought up the issue of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and all the propaganda that surrounded that. Governments are always involved in propaganda, whether it's soft propaganda to try to sell what a good job they're doing, or whether it's this more radical propaganda to try to sell a war. Especially in a time of conflict like this, it's important not to believe the government. I wouldn't believe the Russian government. I wouldn't believe the US government. And so I am grateful to those reporters who push back, but we see tremendous sensationalizing of this issue in the corporate media, and we see them just spoon feeding the American public this one-sided narrative that Russia is evil, the US is good, NATO is good, and it's a much more nuanced reality where all sides have responsibility for the present conflict, but we in the United States have tremendous responsibility as well for the way we have been intimidating Russia on its own borders for years now. And this is not the kind of reporting that we hear in most of the mainstream press.
And it seems as though, they need to make up some kind of claim like this, just because the claims that they've been making up to this point is that Russia is planning to invade because there are Russian troops inside of Russia's own borders, which is just insane, especially, as you mentioned with NATO, just continuing to march to eastward and extend, membership to more countries, which is in violation of what we said back in 1990 when the Berlin Wall fell. So, just what do you think? Do you think that there's going to be any pushback from the corporate media beyond what we saw at that press conference? Do you think they're going to see anybody actually questioning these narratives and these claims, or do you think that they're just going to be repeating State Department and CIA propaganda about Russia?
I think they'll keep repeating the propaganda, unfortunately. And I think the US government, I was always amazed why they didn't plant weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. I was in Iraq at the time of the Colin Powell disastrous intervention at the United Nations. And all the reporters there knew there was nothing there. And they said, when the US goes in, they'll plant these. Well, they didn't, which was surprising, but they probably learned from that. And, if this really escalates further, they can also plant some kind of, quote, justification. So I don't trust the mainstream media in terms of doing the kind of real reporting. If they were to do that, there would already be a lot of reporting on how aggressive NATO is, not just the expansion to 14 more countries after they promised in 1990 not to expand eastward, but also the involvement in NATO, a North American treaty organization, in the invasion of Afghanistan, in the invasion of Libya, in the march towards an aggressive position towards China. They have called China, which is in the Pacific, for anybody who doesn't know, a threat to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization's security. And NATO is also an organization that has as a goal to get each of its countries to spend more on militarism. It's almost as if the military-industrial complex created NATO so that they could make sure that they could continue to sell their weapons of destruction. So I would have hoped, but I don't believe it will happen, that this is the time to educate the American people on why NATO should have been disbanded at the time the Soviet Union dissolved and after the Warsaw Pact, which was its counterpart, dissolved. Instead, I fear that this is a time where NATO will be strengthened.
And that's really the sad part too, is I feel as though Americans don't have really any understanding of history to a large degree. I mean, I honestly do think there are more Americans who are skeptical of claims that the government makes than, might be represented in the media, for example. But, you see so many folks who don't quite understand that NATO was created because of the Cold War, and that, we had this 70-year conflict with the Soviet Union. And even after communism fell and the Soviet Union fell, we still have this adversarial relationship with Russia, and we have this new Cold War. And, it's funny too, because even if you just look back a few years, you had Barack Obama and John Kerry laughing at Mitt Romney because Mitt Romney said that Russia was our #1 geopolitical foe.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
71 United States senators all supported President Obama's New START treaty, but not Mitt Romney. He's even blurted out the preposterous notion that Russia is our #1 geopolitical foe. Folks, Sarah Palin said she could see Russia from Alaska. Mitt Romney talks like he's only seen Russia by watching Rocky IV. I tell you. So,
but now we seem right back in the Cold War. We have this hysteria. Just how do you think that we got back to this place so quickly, and how do you think that we don't really have a understanding of that? Again, we had these in place previously as saying that we were against communism, but now it seems as though that's been out the window, and it seems really as though we're just permanently adversaries with Russia and China, at least insofar as we need to keep expanding global imperialism and U.S. hegemony around the planet.
Well, it's not the only answer, but an important part of the answer is the strength of the weapons industries, the military contractors. They get billions and billions and billions of dollars from conflict. We even have the CEO of Raytheon talking about the conflict in Ukraine and in Yemen and saying that I fully believe we're going to see some benefit from it. They want to stir up conflict. They want to see the US in a state of perpetual war. And it's better for them if the wars are not against small countries like Afghanistan, but are against major powers like Russia and China, because then it justifies even more money and more high-tech weapons for the benefits of their stockholders. That is one of the answers. The other is really a part of the mindset of this country. And I would say we have to trace that back to all of the propaganda that the military itself spends on convincing us how good they are. And they use our own money, our tax money, billions of dollars of it, to take out, to be advertising themselves at football stadiums, all kinds of sports events, in the media, in religious venues, in cultural venues. We know how the military and the CIA vet and work with a lot of Hollywood producers. And as a result, even though the US military can't win a war against the Taliban, they are still seen as the most trusted institution in the United States. And that puts us in a constant mindset that we have the best military in the world, and that they can help us in resolving these conflicts when we know that the opposite is true. So, there are a number of factors involved in it. I think also this idea that the US is an exceptional country, it makes it so easy to say US good, Russia bad, this kind of black and white painting of a much more complex world. And then you said the lack of historical perspective. Gore Vidal once called the United States the United States of amnesia. And there was somebody else who said that war is the way that Americans learn geography. I don't think the majority of Americans can find Ukraine on the map, nor do they care very much about the people of Ukraine. But yet they get caught up in this hysteria of saying USA, rah, rah, rah. And it is part of what allows the media and the politicians to make a lot of Americans go against their best interest and start supporting these wars.
And honestly, I kind of think that the past several years of the claims that Donald Trump was a Russian asset and that Russia interfered in the 2016 election, I think that that had a permanent influence on politics in the US and especially on the left, right? Because even like look at Julian Assange, for example, he was considered a hero or an acceptable personality in liberal circles. He would appear on Real Time with Bill Maher, for example. And then after the 2016 election, he's just been obviously arrested but demonized on the left. And I think that Russiagate was widely adopted by the left. I mean, we saw these kinds of claims repeated on shows like TYT, for example. And I think that there's a straight line from that Russiagate hysteria to now what we're seeing, where a lot of Democrats are probably in favor of fighting a ground war with Russia. So, I mean, would you agree? Do you think that Russiagate has kind of paved the way for what we're seeing now?
Absolutely. I think you really expressed it very well, which is all this propaganda over the years builds up anti-Russia sentiment, especially among the Democrats. And then we see a similar kind of thing among Republicans when Trump was in office and was demonizing China, and how that led to not only an increase in attacks on Asian Americans in this country, but also goes to justify the Pentagon budget. And let's face it, year after year, when that budget gets voted on, there are very few in the political establishment that go against these constant increases in the budget. And so here we are today, where it's very difficult when our own progressives in the Congress are more afraid of being labeled pro-Putin than they are being part of an anti-war movement that they know better. I mean, they know that war is not the answer. They know that we need to de-escalate, not continue this rush towards war. And yet I think because of all that has come before, as you so well enunciated, it means that they are they're afraid to come out and be in the kind of moral anti-war position that they should be in.
Yeah, again, it's just it's so unfortunate to see it again, because I really became aware or became involved in politics during the Iraq War, and at the time, Democrats, at least in the mid 2000s, they slowly adopted that rhetoric, and Barack Obama was really elected on that momentum of being anti-war, and we're just we're seeing the opposite now, where Democrats are seemingly embracing neoconservatism.
But we also saw that Trump gained a lot of votes for being perceived as anti-war as well. Anti-war is actually a very popular sentiment that crosses party lines, especially if you look at libertarians. There's many conservative Republicans who are anti-war. So that's why it's important for us, as we build up this sentiment against going to war with Russia, that we don't think of it in partisan terms at all. We reach out as much as we can to the broadest segment of the American people to say, stop, this is not what we want.
I agree wholeheartedly. And I think, that kind of solidarity, that working class solidarity, is needed on a lot of different issues. But just on this topic specifically, something that's concerning to me is it seems as though we're really the media has been talking about this in terms of what if there's a ground war in Ukraine, which obviously would be catastrophic. But again, just going back to the Cold War, the reason that we never fought Russian troops is because we didn't want global nuclear annihilation. And again, if you just look at with China, how we've been ramping up tensions there within Taiwan, and again, just all these countries around the world. North Korea, Iran, where we have these conflicts going on. It seems as though a conflict in Ukraine, a ground war in Ukraine, could very quickly escalate into World War III and potentially the end of mankind in a nuclear Armageddon. So, I mean, do you think that that's is that one of your concerns? And just also, what do you think the political elite are thinking when they're escalating tensions like this? I mean, they have to realize as well that you don't want to have a ground war because that could lead towards nuclear war.
Yes, I think that the Biden administration recognizes that the American people don't want to see U.S. soldiers fighting and dying in Ukraine. And so he has said this will not be a ground war with U.S. troops involved. And yet, you don't know how these things escalate. You don't know how they go once there is a momentum of its own. So, of course, I worry about that, and recognizing that the US and Russia are the two largest nuclear powers with 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. That is so scary to think of a war with Russia. So the world wars that have happened in the past, nobody had the foresight to see how they would spiral out of control. And we have no idea this time around, except we know that it could be, as you say, the end of human life on this planet if it was taken to its extreme. And that's why it's so important to be taking the stand right now that you can put the blame wherever you want. If you want to put it on Russia, NATO, the US, all of them. But the responsibility for stopping this also rests on all of us, and particularly us in the United States, because the US is the superpower, and the US believes it can bully the world. And the US believes it is this exceptional country that has the right to interfere in other countries' internal affairs. So that's why I feel it's so critical that we really build up this movement right now.
And again, Medea, I really appreciate you and Code Pink putting together these protests tomorrow. I'm going to be, after this interview, reading off a list of all different cities that the protests are taking place in. But beyond tomorrow, beyond these demonstrations, what else can people do to get involved and do their best to try to prevent conflict between the U.S. and Russia?
You can be organizing in your own community so that the next protest is bigger and broader. You can be contacting your member of Congress, both in the House and the Senate, and telling them not to sign on to these terrible bills in Congress that will give hundreds of millions of more in weapons to Ukraine, and sanctions on Russia that will affect the ordinary Russian citizens. You can be writing and contacting your media to tell them to stop sensationalizing and have voices for reason and voices for peace, to give the quote other side. I think the important thing is really trying to do something on a regular basis. I make it a habit to call the White House every day. We have so much money for war, but we don't have enough money to have a comment line at the White House that is staffed by paid people. They're all volunteers, and we don't have enough money that it's open 24/7. It's open 5 hours a day, 3 days a week, which is absolutely ridiculous. So I call it every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I write constantly. And I know people think it's just like sending these messages into a big black hole, but I don't think so. I think the more that people hear from us now, the more they will have to wonder, what are the American people going to think come November, if we are in a military conflict with Russia? Is this going to be good for their reelection or not? And I would say no. I think well, the calculation tends to be in the past that anybody who's tough on security has an edge up in the elections. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Well, Medea Benjamin, I really do appreciate you being back on the show today. And again, I appreciate all the work that you do, and the fact that you're putting together these demonstrations against conflict tomorrow. I'm looking forward to taking part in them. I hope that everybody who's watching takes part as well. And thank you again for your time. And I hope I can have you back at some point in the future.
Terrific. Thanks so much. Let's hope we can stop this war before it starts.
So hey folks, here is the list of events taking place tomorrow. You may want to check back on Code Pink's website. This may be updated. I noticed that they did add some other events on here, but here's a list. Actually, this afternoon and evening, there are some taking place in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Sacramento, California, and Newport Beach, California, also Honolulu. But tomorrow, in Germany, in Berlin, Germany, there's one at 2 p.m. There's also demonstrations in the Villages, Florida at 10 a.m., Huntsville, Alabama at 10 a.m., Kodiak, Alaska at 10 a.m., Setauket, New York at 11 a.m., Greenfield, Massachusetts at 11 a.m., Northampton, Massachusetts at 11 a.m., DeWitt, New York at 11 a.m., Minneapolis, Minnesota at 11 a.m., Manchester Center, Vermont at 12 p.m., Carbondale, Illinois at 12 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at 12 p.m., Ann Arbor, Michigan at 12 p.m., Baltimore, Maryland at 12 p.m., Brooklyn, New York at 12 p.m., St. Helena, South Carolina at 12 p.m., Hastings on Hudson, New York at 12 p.m. There's also a Zoom call at 12 p.m., Columbus, Ohio at 12 p.m., Kansas City, Missouri at 11 a.m., Lenexa, Kansas at 11 a.m., Buffalo, New York at 12 p.m., Des Moines, Iowa at 11 a.m., Providence, Rhode Island at 1 p.m., Milwaukee, Wisconsin at 12 p.m., Boston, Massachusetts at 1 p.m., Madison, Wisconsin at 12 p.m., San Diego, California at 10 a.m., Silverdale, Washington at 10 a.m., Fort Collins, Colorado at 11:30 a.m., Chicago at 1 p.m., Washington, D.C. at 2 p.m., Tucson, Arizona at 12 p.m., Missoula, Montana at 12 p.m., Lake Forest Park, Washington at 11 a.m., Bethlehem, Pennsylvania at 2 p.m., Elgin, Illinois at 1 p.m., Phoenix, Arizona at 12 p.m., Seattle, Washington at 11:30 a.m., New Orleans, Louisiana at 12 p.m., in New York City at Father Duffy Square at 3 p.m., Portland, Oregon, 12 p.m., Portland, Maine, 3 p.m., Nashville, Tennessee at 2 p.m., Santa Cruz, California at 12 p.m., Eugene, Oregon at 12 p.m., Oakland, California at 12 p.m., Kingston, Washington at 12 p.m., Easton, Pennsylvania at 3 p.m., East Sound, Washington at 12 p.m., Olympia, Washington at 12 p.m., Asheville, North Carolina at 4 p.m., Seattle, Washington at 1 p.m., Bothell, Washington at 1 p.m., Flower Mound, Texas at 3 p.m., Philadelphia, Pennsylvania at 4 p.m., Berkeley, California at 2 p.m., Fairbanks, Alaska at 1 p.m., San Antonio, Texas at 4:30 p.m., Los Angeles, California at 3 p.m., San Mateo, California at 3 p.m., Goleta, California at 3 p.m., and Santa Barbara, California at 3 p.m. Then on the 6th, there's another webinar at noon, and there's an event in Jackson, Kentucky at 3 p.m. Then on February 8th, there's an event in Slovenia, so if you're in Eastern Europe, please take part in that event. And finally, on February 12th, there's an event in Columbus, Ohio at noon. So please, folks, do take part in one of these events across the country. It is important to get out there, make your voice heard, make clear that you do not support American troops being in Eastern Europe. This is important not just for the survival of the people in Ukraine, but people around the planet. Thanks again, folks, for listening. Thank you to Medea Benjamin and Code Pink for being on the show today. and for organizing these events across the country tomorrow. And let's work together to stop this war with Russia before it happens.